It's the 14th of the second 2025, and there are very many F1 centric threads at which we need to pull. Can you feel it, chat? Can you feel that the atmosphere all around F1 is doing one of these, going parabolic? I can. It's going to get techie over the next couple of weeks. Remember, a couple of weeks' time, we've got the bloody F1 livery. In fact, sack off that. What are you talking about? A couple of weeks' time, 4 days' time. On the 18th of February, there will be the O2 F1 livery launch. The following date's rumoured that there will be some sort of paraphernalia around Maranello and or Fiorano. That it will be Ferrari's turn to do what McLaren did this year. And then the next weekend, we've got 26th, 27th, 28th, and it's testing then, and I'm here for it. Inject it into my veins. We're seeing cars now. MCL 39 revealed yesterday, and it looks quick, doesn't it? It does look a bit quick. Just the way it looks, whatever that means, do you know what I mean? Sometimes you look at the Flexi-wing and you remember clear blue, that McLaren had the quickest machinery ostensibly last year. Extrapolate out for that. Of course they're going to be quick this year then. Can the balls that are red catch them up? Well, potentially. Max Verstappen too, but we'll get to that. Here's what we're going to talk about. I want to talk about the North American TV rights first, because it's rumoured that ESPN are no longer interested in it. So too, I want to talk a little bit about Williams's botched F1 livery reveal. What are they doing? Bloody more talk about Galileo and Fermat's last theorem than there was F1. If there is a bad way to do engagement, then the Williams livery launch was nothing if not that. So too, I'm going to talk about Lando Norris's words. McLaren doing more PR than any team over the off-season, not named Scuderia Ferrari, and they apparently had something to boast, no gloat about in Sir Lewis, the 7-time champion. GOAT setting, some say, joining their team. McLaren now on the offensive. We'll talk about two things. Lando Norris giving interviews to Sky Sports F1's Martin Brundle, and what's the other guy's name? Craig Slater. He's given another interview with Lawrence Barretto, saying on there some things about Maximilian Verstappen. Oh, the humanity. Let me say, for the avoidance of doubt, I desperately want Lando to come and show and prove, to keep Max and Lewis and Charles Leclerc honest in that car, which more than likely is going to be the quickest machine on the grid, particularly at the start of the season. But you know, I'll be honest, Lando Norris, I'm not sure if he's got it. I just don't know if he has it in him. Not to be a superb God tier racer. Of course he has that. You guys have seen Zandvoort and bloody Singapore, both tracks around which he was superb. God tier settings, but then the mistakes creep in. I saw a Reddit post talking about Lando. We'll go on to this in more detail in a minute. I saw a Reddit post talking about Lando, that there's one thing that he needed to do is practice his starts ad infinitum. What are you talking about, Cameron? We're talking about defensive posture or lack thereof as far as last year. Switching up through the gears at the right time. Right. Dialing in the right amount of RPM off the line to nail your launch. That's all that I wanted to see from Lando Norris. All of the other talk again, so I understand that they've got sponsors boxes to tick. I get it. But all the other stuff fades to black, if I'm honest. I want to see Lando come out there and deliver on his unfulfilled potential. And what I'm hearing and seeing from Lando in the off-season gives me pause for thought, makes me doubt whether we'll ever see that, let alone in 2025. But I digress. Let's talk about the US TV rights. Netflix are in it to win it. We talked about this earlier in the week, right? That Netflix is sniffing around the US TV rights. The TV rights around F1 is a very complicated business, siphoned off into different territories. But for the avoidance of doubt, ESPN have held on to those rights for the past, I want to say, 3-4 years. Initially, it was something like 5 million a year, pre-COVID even, so longer than that, must be about 8 years. Pre-COVID, it was like 5 million per year is what ESPN were paying. It was almost free. Post-COVID, post-Drive to Survive, something different as far as F1's popularity and the extent to which mainstream eyes are drawn to F1 as a sporting endeavour, as a $1 billion enterprise franchise even. Now then, well, since then, they renewed at $80-90 million per year. Now, however, it's going to be much, much more. And we get news via Puck News today saying that ESPN is getting out of the F1 business. Oh, the humanity, Genie. What are we doing here, Jay? That they're going to get out of the business now when F1 is about to go parabolic. Bloody Nora. Here's what the news piece says. Bristol executives told the racing series that they will not renew the company's rights package, meaning the racing circuit will have a new US media partner next year. What's going on here? That is poor form, in my humble opinion. I'd love to be in a room where the C-suite execs put that forth as a proposition. What are they thinking? Surely not. Okay, so there's a risk about how much money they have as versus how much reward they can gain from it, because renewing for the TV rights this time will not be $80 million per year. It will cost you much more, particularly with Netflix, the streaming platform, sniffing around now, looking to synergize from producing Drive to Survive with now hosting live sports in the form of F1. Lest we forget, not long ago it was Tyson and bloody Jake Paul. Not long ago over Christmas it was NFL, all through the festive period on Netflix. And they've done other things. WWE, $10 billion deal over 10 years or whatever it is. They are in to win it, of course. Why? Well, because sports streaming, you don't need to create the content. It creates itself. These games and matches and fights and races are going to happen anyway. You don't need to invest in the pipeworks and infrastructure. You just pay for the TV rights. And that's why Netflix are sniffing around US TV rights in real time. But I will see Netflix this and I will raise them that. Here's what I think about I think Netflix need the rights for the entire world. Can you imagine? You imagine if I didn't need to pay my £90 a month to Sky Sports by dint of the HD subscription and this other noddy package that I need to get before I can get to Sky Sports. Imagine if I could just sack that off, cancel that in an instant, no longer need to put up with noddy Naomi Schiff and Jensen Button and watch myself some proper sports coverage, if indeed they got Alex Jacks, let's say, on Netflix. Oh, the humanity. There is one impediment to that though, chat. And that, of course, is the fact that F1 have long been trying to build their own host platform in F1 TV. Here's hoping, though, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in the F1 community as an F1 fan, that Netflix, by dint of a £10 per month membership, facilitate access to F1, live F1, each and every single race. Oh, the humanity. I'll be here for it. Turtle, Techie. Daniel says, okay, sometimes not recommended all the time. Marie says, nice to be here listening to Cameron. No, you guys are legends, man. Again, let me say this. I should say this up front each and every single time. My name is above the door, but you guys build the bloody house. The foundation is you, the back and forth, the chat. Not bad conversation with Nasha and Baxty, by the way, on the shakedown, the latest iteration of no shares, but it was heated as ever. Go and check that out if you haven't already. Go on then, let's talk about Williams before we get to some McLaren, because I've got some things to show you guys. Williams launched themselves a car. The car is the car is the car. Craig Scarborough, the legend that is, posted on Twitter the following highlights. Neat stacked arrangement on the front suspension arms. Cool, whatever that means. Rear angle shows the suspension arms again, that a slope treatment to the floor. I should have put these pictures up, but we'll talk to them anyway. Roll hoop and top bodywork hide the big underskins. Cooling changes, sculpted rear end. Whatever all of that technical nubbins means. I think Williams are going to be back markers again. James Vowles during the livery launch was talking all sorts of stuff about them prioritising 2025 in addition to 2026, that they don't want to spread themselves too thin, that they've got Carlos Sainz now who's going to provide a different level of feedback and take them to the next level. Cool chap. Let's talk more action though from Williams. That's all that I want to see. Said something else about Flexi-wing, that they've been developing one. Flexi-wing, for the avoidance of doubt, is the battleground upon which we've been saying that the championships that are the drivers and the constructors will be fought on. It's going to get techie. It is going to get techie for the Flexi-wing gang. Lest we forget, McLaren had nailed it last year by dint of Rob Marshall. Now, however, Red Bull are coming. The house of Ferrari 2 are coming. And Mercedes are coming again, all with their different iterations of Flexi-wing 2. Worth noting, Technical Directive 1.8 will be instituted from the Spanish Grand Prix. I want to say round 8. So what do they do then? How do they split their resources? It sounds like what Williams have done is prioritise the next iteration of Flexi-wing, make sure that it will pass the load test and not flex beyond 30 millimeters now, and then 3 millimeters on the inboard portion. That's what they've done. How do we know? Because James Vowles said that he didn't think that their car, this Williams iteration, the FW47 or whatever you want to call it, will be hit as badly as the other teams when the new portion, the new rules, the TD18 technical directive is instituted in Spain. That's James Vowles' words, not me. What do you guys think of Williams? I think it's a bit of a shame, you know, I'll be honest. And what's even more of a shame, if we're talking about history and what they were once upon a time, a behemoth of an F1 team, Sir Frank Williams settings, 1992 and 1993 winners of one of the quickest cars that you've ever seen, one of the most creative, innovative machines in the FW14, I think. Active aero settings in 93. Alain Prost, unprecedented levels of domination. Now, however, they're just a shadow, a skeleton of their former selves now. And I think that is a shame. And never more has that point been emphasised when you see the bloody hoopla around that livery launch trying to get themselves some sponsorship time. What are we doing here? I mean, get to the point, Steve Jones, Naomi Shift, Ambassador, Jenson Button. I know everybody's got to make bank around here, but don't put on a launch and you don't show us a car until 45 minutes in. What are we doing here? Stop wasting mine and your time. Tell us the truth. Otherwise, you won't. The merchandise sales, there's probably not any material anyway, but what little there were will dry up most definitely. Marie, you're an absolute legend and far too kind as always. I don't like what Williams did to us, by the way. I didn't even have it necessarily in my calendar. I saw it last minute, hence the inefficient scheduling from your boy Cameron CC. But when I saw it pop up, I felt like I owed not necessarily Williams a debt of gratitude, but Carlos Sainz, since he's one of my favourite drivers. It'd be disingenuous of me not to support him in doing a live stream. But then you get on and they're talking all this Galileo stuff. Quiz? What? Mr. and Mrs. Is this the time and place for it? I understand that everybody's got bills to pay and that sponsors even need themselves some airtime. I get it, but do it better than that. Make it fun properly. This is what we're going to be talking about. You know, this is old media versus new media. This is just nonsense. This is Kodak versus iPhone. If you're going to try and do new media and make it fun, do it properly. I mean, invest in a Tomo or an Aldus or a Quick Stop F1. Get somebody that knows something. Do you know what I mean? Steve Jones out here. People say that he's a bit of a legend on Channel 4 out here asking questions about Galileo and Fermat's last theory. Like that bears any relevance to Formula. What do we do? Honestly, absolute nonsense. Starley, will Red Bull be the best again or worse than ever? There ain't no telling. Starley. How do you not like... Look, I was just talking to a friend about this, about Red Bull and Max Verstappen. We'll get on to Max Verstappen and Red Bull in a minute, but just to address the question, I don't think Red Bull will be the fastest car, but as far as Maximilian Verstappen's challenge to do a 5th consecutive championship, I think they will be fast enough. What do you mean by that? Well, let's talk about McLaren first, because Zak Brown's come out and said a couple of different things. 3 of which I want for you to listen to on the Intercooler Podcast. He spoke as follows. Roll the clip.
We're going to let you guys race, but let's break away from the field and then race, because we definitely believe in letting our drivers race.
You said just now that you got 2 great guys as well as 2 great drivers. Is that in itself a potential problem? Insofar as you look at the multiple world championships, the Ayrtons, the Michaels, the Maxes, even the Lewis, there is a killer instinct in those guys. Do your guys have that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
They just don't have it towards
because
us.
It seems...
Which I think is...
It seemed at times last season, for instance, and this is just an outsider's perspective, but that Max was getting in Lando's head.
Yeah, I think, Max is as brutal as you get on track. I mean, the guy's 4-time world champion. He's as great of a racing driver as I've ever seen. I think Lando kind of for the first time was at the front of the field on a regular basis come Miami. So I think it was just more, finally had some wheel-to-wheel combats with Max and had to learn how Max races, where we're going to let you guys race.
Right, so that's Zak Brown, team principal of McLaren, talking on the Intercooler Podcast. Go and watch. I will link the podcast in the description. It's insightful, 30 minutes circa. He said a couple of things there. That's the first time that I'm hearing Zak own up to his errors, doing mea culpa, particularly when he's talking about Monza. Now, there were two other instances, right? Several others during 2024. Instances of naivete as far as McLaren in their challenge to win both the drivers and constructors. As your exhibit A, Monza, cool. He's spoken to that. What about Hungary, though? What about Silverstone? There were multitudinous missteps and errors of the unforced variety from McLaren last year. It's as if they'd never been to the dance. And this iteration of McLaren has never been to the championship dances. And it showed. Zak Brown now finally saying, you know what, we should have been a bit stricter with our drivers at Monza. The rules should have been firmer. The rules of engagement then should have been more explicit. Papaya rules, what's that? Don't crash into each other. What? And then you get a Monza incident where these guys are losing places to the likes of Charles Leclerc and all these other Max Verstappen. You can't afford to lose points. If there's one truism in Formula One history, it is that every point matters. If indeed you are looking to climb the mountaintop, atop of which lies drivers and constructors championships. Zak Brown, Andrea Stella, so too Oscar Jack Piastri did not get the memo. That is the altar at which the championship challenge of one Lando Norris failed in 2024. This is insightful from Zak Brown, because as far as I'm concerned, this is the first time when I've heard him do one of these. No longer is it the old papaya colours nonsense. And yeah, we let our drivers race and we're a racing team and all of this gubbins. Now, for once, when asked to be honest and earnest about 2024, Zak Brown says mea culpa. We did wrong, not leveraging a driver hierarchy and team orders per se was a mistake, and that fills me with, that makes my heart happy for 2025, because lest we wish to repeat the mistakes of Christmas past and the errors, the strategic errors of the unforced variety. Zak Brown and McLaren will continuously develop and improve. Stop doing this nonsense then. I think the host asked a really good question. Are your drivers too nice as well? I was just watching another interview of Lando Norris, and I'm not sure that he's right. I don't think he understands how big the task in front of him is. There's a couple of things that he needs to do. We've already talked about the starts. Drill those then. Execute, consolidate your position off the pole. How does he do that? Well, it's the defensive posture. It's dialing the requisite amount of RPM off the start line. It's going hard and fast, hard in the paint into turn one and getting your elbows out, which he said he's more than prepared to do. But I'm not sure. It feels like talk and not enough action. I'm going to be honest with you. When talking about continuous improvement, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example. When fighters come back, there is a glint in their eye that tells you that they've done all of their homework already. And I think this is gloss from Lando Norris. I hope to God that I'm incorrect with this. But when I listen to him speak, yeah, you know what, we did really, really well last year and I'm going to be better this year. I raced with Max, and Max isn't the only guy that I'm going to be competing with. It's going to be Lewis and it's going to be... Like, what? What is he talking? What gubbins? Matthew, you're a legend. Haven't even turned the lap yet and McLaren are already barking. Max haunts you and Lando day and night doesn't. Well, Zak's told everybody, right? Zak said it just there that he's one of the greatest drivers ever to steer an F1 car, and it's going to be difficult, and Lando's first rodeo with Max Verstappen and he's only going to learn from it. I don't know. Here's what Lando needs to do. If we're going to have an open and honest conversation, yeah, this is what Lando needs to do. In addition to the starts, keep seeing these stats. The Maximilian Verstappen is the first driver to have led 1,000 days back to back in the Drivers' Championship. Yeah, it's not apples and apples because there are more races these days. You can't compare it with the era of Ayrton Senna as an example. But what is the lesson from those 1,000 days? What do you have to do to lead a championship for 1,000 days back to back? Start out hot. Get out the gate quick. Every single starting race one, Max always gets out the blocks fast. And that makes him even more, even as a proposition, as a challenge, that makes the gradient even steeper, right? Because he's always out front. Then you've got to overtake him both on the track and in the driver's standings. And that's always going to be difficult as a function of Max Verstappen's very unique and aggressive driving style. And so too his racing brain. If he's ahead in the Drivers' Championships, of course he can assume more risk. You can assume less, because for every DNF you both have, that's a step closer Max takes to the 5th consecutive championship, back to back to back to back to back. It's chaos. So Lando needs to get out the gate quick. But a thousand days is what Max Verstappen has done, back to back to back, leading the drivers' standings. So that tells you all you need to know. He's going to get out the gate quick because he understands in that there is lap time and durable competitive advantage. Lando will need to offset that. Imagine if Lando can do the first 3 races, race winning, 25 points each, 75 points going into race 4. Then it's a different proposition altogether, right? The pressure would no longer be on Lando. He can ease back his shoulders just like he did at Abu Dhabi. Here's what I think Lando Norris is. I think he's a relaxed driver. I think he's God tier when he's relaxed and when the pressure is off him. People used to leverage this criticism of Michael Schumacher, you know. Please see as your Exhibit A 1994 that when Damon Hill was putting pressure on Michael Schumacher at Adelaide as an example, that Michael Schumacher cracked, some say. Some people will leverage the same criticism of Lando Norris, that every time he had a fire-breathing dragon behind him in, I don't know, Charles or Maximilian Verstappen, then he crumbled. He couldn't take, particularly Max couldn't take the pressure. Austria as an example, and Lando talks about that in the interview with Lawrence Pareto, saying that if he wasn't that bad, if I just moved to the left a little bit, I would have been Gucci. Well, if you just studied the equivalent fixture only a couple of years earlier, you'd have seen Max on Carlos Sainz doing exactly the same bloody manoeuvre. And this is where I feel like Lando needs to play this now, like Gary Kasparov would a chess game against Karpov or a Nigel Short or a Magnus Carlsen. You've seen all the moves before because you've studied them. Somebody said this on a podcast recently, that Lando Norris needs to go back and analyse. I think it was Will Buxton, to be fair. If I were Lando Norris, he said, I would go back and I would watch every single overtaking move, both offensive and defensive, of Maximilian Verstappen over the past 36 months. Every single one of them at all the tracks. And I would have them down pat like it was timetables. That's the levels that's required to beat this chap. I'm telling you, stop glazing Max Verstappen. All we do on this channel is talk truth, value and objectivity, for we'll never sacrifice them at the altar of partisanship, nor confirmation and or recency bias or any other cognitive dissonance worthy of the name. It's going to get techie for Lando, I'm telling you, but I digress. Here's your roll the clip, Zak Brown, Exhibit B.
Don't take any risks. So Lando didn't really defend because he thought, well, let's not take risks. Oscar went, well, the door's wide open.
Yeah.
Cracking move.
It was a great move, but hey, that's not a risk. The door's open.
Yeah.
What we should have said was, don't pass until we give you the green light, because what we want to do is gap the field. Then you guys are free to race. So you learn by that and go, actually, what would we have done differently in Monza? We would have said, we're going to let you guys race, but let's break away from the field and then race, because we definitely believe in letting our drivers race.
No kidding, Sherlock. As glad as I am that Zak Brown, team principal of McLaren, is now coming out and stating the obvious, it fills my heart with woe and dread that they could make such a schoolboy error in the first instance. Peloton settings, use each other, build a gap just like he said, and then you can fight and race if indeed you want to. But we conduct our activities surely, if we are McLaren, all in the name of winning races and therefore championships. So how are you going to have Oscar Jack Piastri nail Sir Lando Norris into chicane 2 at the Italian Grand Prix, and in doing so sacrifice a second place Lando Norris's at the altar of Charles Leclerc, aka modern day Jean Alesi? What are we doing here? How stupid can a team be? Now, I think Andrea Stella is a good one. I think he's got a sound racing mind. Michael Schumacher, Ferrari settings. He's got all that Pep Guardiola of Formula One in the way that he thinks about the sport. Man who's not chasing time in any upgrade, looking at the bigger picture with a view to give his team and his drivers the parameters within which they can grow and prosper, make their decisions, foster a working culture that enables and or facilitates innovation. That's key. So you build an F1 team so that guy, in conjunction with Zak Brown, could allow for that Monza circumstance, let alone forget Hungary and forget Silverstone, but the Monza circumstance to transpire is absolutely insane. That Zak Brown can do mea culpa 100%, that's worthy of note and or mention. But bloody Nora, that it happened in the first place, that Lando Norris's maiden voyage as far as a championship campaign fell foul flat on its face at the altar of indecision as far as their strategic decision making is incredible. Roll the third kip.
We all do spend time trying to destabilize the competition. It's very political in that sense. And so I think when you look at Red Bull, which is an unbelievable team with hugely talented people, they've lost some really good people. Yeah. They had their challenges at the beginning of the year. We all do spend time trying to destabilize the competition. It's very political in that sense. And so I think when you look at Red Bull, which is an unbelievable team with hugely talented people, they've lost some really good people. Yeah. They had their challenges at the beginning of the year. We all do spend time trying to destabilize.
Yeah, roll the kip 2 or 3 times, why don't you? So I love that from Zak Brown, that he's admitting now that there is a skullduggery element, that there is lap time in that. What do you think he's talking about there, if we're going to be precise and specific, is the whole rigmarole around Flexi-wing. Look, but for Flexi-wing and their ability to leverage it, Rob Marshall's ability to game the system and the load test. Do you think for a second that Oscar-Jack Piastri would have been able to keep a fire-breathing dragon in modern-day Journalese behind him for the entirety of that second stint at Baku even? Absolutely no flipping chance. It doesn't happen. Plus you've got mini DRS, but this is F1 though, where they bend and break the rules. Read them once to see what they say. Read them a second time to see what they don't say, so that you can therefore exploit that. Then double diffuser settings, Ross Brawn settings, and I don't hate that necessarily, but it's chaos that Zak Brown now is politicking the FIA to ensure that the likes of Red Bull and Mercedes and the rest of the other 9 teams on the grid, the rest of them, can't leverage Flexi-wing to the same extent that McLaren did. It's genius and it's despicable and skullduggerous in equal measure. But how do you like it, F1 chat? It's chaos. Yeah, the clip was a little bit glitched, Remco. It's only a short clip that. I just wanted to show that Zak Brown, I don't think he's playing. Like what Lando Norris needs to do, get his elbows out, but not necessarily just on track from a politicking standpoint. Oh, and by the way, have you guys seen, I've mentioned it a couple of times discreetly because I don't want them to come for me, but have you seen who the 100% shareholder of McLaren Group is? Check it out. He's a sovereign wealth fund from the Middle East. No wonder, therefore, that you get to see Mohammed bin Sulayem up front and centre when Lando Norris wins the Miami Grand Prix, shaking hands and kissing babies, celebrating like his own team has won. Interesting, that. Very interesting. Do your own homework and look at the name of the sovereign wealth and flex the rules. Let's go, says Macon. That Matrix Deja Vu settings. Turtle says, Zach, it's not about what Red Bull does. It's about your drivers and cars. Management needs to be certain and not flip-flop. True, Turtle. But I think those 2 things, those 3 things even, aren't mutually exclusive now. Surely Zak Brown can get up in the face of FIA President Mohammed bin Sulayem and effect change on that front. In addition, so to put it, per se, to having Lando Norris and Oscar-Jack Piastri obey orders. Make sure Oscar, if he's second in the championship, gets in line. You should only be seeing Lando Norris's gearbox, particularly on the first lap of the Italian Grand Prix. What are we doing here? This makes no sense, chat. Honestly, it really makes no sense. No, I can't do MBS again, Remco. It's far too soon. Ben rules are very expensive. Yeah, it's killing me. Go on then, let's talk about Lando Norris as he ran third base. So Lando's given 2 interviews And I thought they were both interesting. One to Sky Sports F1, of course, on the back of the MCL39 reveal, which looks very tasty. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. What they've done, how they've managed to prioritise the anti-dive and anti-squat, some of the sexy things that they're doing with their suspension, why they're doing them with a view to aim, to optimise, prioritise even tyre management. So too the stability of the platform underneath it, ground effect cars, Venturi tunnels, et al. However, let me tell you what Lando Norris said. So, in the first interview, if I recall correctly, with Martin Brundle / Craig Slater, I can't remember which, said a couple of things, and it's all broadly in line with the same thing. That, yeah, last year was hard. I didn't perform as well as I could be. There are lessons to be learned, and I've learned them. Going into next year, I'm going to be less self-deprecating. I'm more confident. Therefore, my ability to deliver and execute is heightened year on year as versus 2-4. Copy. I desperately hope this dude is right, but there are a couple of tells in there. When he's talking about Max Verstappen, he's keen to diminish in real time Max Verstappen's not insubstantial talents. He said of Max Verstappen that it won't be Max Verstappen as the fire-breathing dragon for which I have to slay. It will be the other drivers. I've got to consider Lewis, I've got to consider Charles, and I've got to consider George, and so too I've got to consider Oscar Piastri. That, ladies and gentlemen, to me, if I'm honest, feels like it's distraction. I was having a chat with a friend today at work talking about Maximilian Verstappen and who that dude is. That if you're going to beat him in 2025, and I mean this earnestly, this is me talking objectively, putting on my F1 investigative forensic accounting cap and just speaking to what I see. True value, honesty, integrity, all that stuff. We'll never sacrifice it at the altar of partisanship. Me talking to what I see. If you're going to beat that dude in 2025, you're going to need stuff. You're going to need a car capable, ostensibly the quickest on the grid, or at the very least quicker materially than Maximilian Verstappen's. You're going to need fortuitous circumstances. You're going to need for the racing gods to be smiling at you as near as makes no difference. 24 race weekends of the year. If you don't have all of those aforementioned in tandem concurrently, you can forget about it. You stand no chance, especially not Lando Norris, who has questions himself as well as the F1 community about his mental fortitude and or lack thereof. It's going to get techie for Lando, I'm telling you. And he's got other outside interests. He's not, lest we forget, he's talented, but he's not Sir Lewis Hamilton talented. Not yet, at least. Brilliant as he was at points in last year, I don't think he's there quite yet. So some would argue, F1 diehards and purists, greybeards alike, that can Lando afford to split his interests? He's got quadrant, hasn't he? He plays golf a lot of the time with Zak Brown. Now, you need to be relaxed as an F1 driver. But lest we forget Nico Rosberg in overcoming a not insubstantial natural talent deficit to his teammate at the time in 2016 in Sir Lewis Hamilton. Put everything aside. All of his efforts were focused to getting to the mountaintop of the Drivers' Championship. These were the very narrow parameters within which he was forced to operate. So badly did he want to fulfill that dream. Sacked off training a certain way so he could lose muscle mass and then lose weight and so gain lap time. That was Nico Rosberg. Sacked off all the paint off his helmet to save bloody weight and so gain himself an additional couple of hundredths. What are we doing here? Broaden the bloody visor so we could see more, so we could enhance his peripheral vision. Was willing to bend and break the rules as he did at Monaco in 2015. He did not care because, like Christian Horner said, if you want something, then you will do anything to get that. And Nico Rosberg in 2016 was the embodiment of that. Lando doesn't have that yet, and he might need it. What do they say? It's better to have and not need than need and not have. I want to say that's a Joe Rogan statement. And at the moment, Lando might need that level of resilience and determination, that ruthlessness, if indeed he's to overcome a Maximilian Verstappen and or a Sir Lewis Hamilton. But at the moment, I'm not sure by dint of his verbiage to a Sky Sports F1, a Craig Slater, or whoever else, a Lawrence Burrito. I'm not sure that he has that just yet, and that's what concerns me. Every single time I hear him talk, it just sounds like lip service and nothing but. He doesn't strike me as the dude that's going to follow through, execute, and that's the same story as it was last year now, and that's what concerns me. Genie, it's techie. Can't even watch the news. F1 only, but it's going the same way. Oh gosh, should we talk? I can't even do it. It's too chaotic. If there's a lot of wet races, it would be interesting with all the rookies. Oh no. So then you'll get another Brazil, right? Another Max Verstappen masterclass. And Sir Lewis. Who else is another Reagan Meister? The joke is Lance Stroll tends to go well in the wet now. He's a bit of a Reagan Meister, or at least he has been. I've never seen somebody like Lance Stroll in the past. Normally it's the great ones that are brilliant in the wet and then even better yet and still, or sorry, even good in the dry and then better yet in the wet. But he's poor in the wet and then very, very good. But he's poor in the dry, sorry, get your words out. Poor in the dry and then very, very good in the wet. How? It's like reverse. What's wrong with Lance Stroll? Absolute case, Kenny, you're a legend. Oscar showed more champions mentality in his... This is true. In his ruthlessness, no. He's techie. Kenny says, sorry, Kenny, I miss your super chat. Thank you so much, by the way. So they hadn't learned by Monza, which was actually 5 races after Hungary. It's a very good point. Face blue smiling. Honestly, that shows that they weren't ready. They weren't ready, were they? But it was in their defence, if we're going to be balanced, it was their first rodeo. For many years. When was the last time that McLaren won? 99? I mean, this is a completely different era of a McLaren team. They bear no resemblance to the 1999 team. No staff will be there to build the car. No strategic minds are there to leverage their success in previous years. Turtle says maximum carnage in the wet with rookie. Yeah, no, I think so. But expect the cream will rise to the top in the wet, right? The genius of the drive of Max Verstappen. Stop closing, Max Verstappen. Can you hear them? Can you hear the Max Verstappen naysayer cockroaches? Those who don't dine at the restaurant of excellence. Can you hear them? Oh, stop talking about it. Here's the thing. I was talking about Max Verstappen on Chez's podcast recently, Tired GP, arguing that Max Verstappen will, if not is already, one of the greatest F1 drivers in all of history. But the genius of the Brazil Grand Prix wasn't necessarily the overtakes on Ocon or Piastri, his ability to keep it on the black stuff. Like it wasn't all that. It was his ability to hold onto the car long enough for that red flag to come out. Both him and Ocon, by the way. That was the genius of that drive. That if he couldn't do that, then I think he probably still would have got to the front in the end. I think he was inevitable that day. But he expedites for his learning curve and takes the line of least resistance by holding onto the car that long for Colapinto to yeet it into the barrier, right? And that'll be the same again. Don't get Cam started with Brazil 24. Nando, even you know, with your Max Verstappen naysayer self, that what you were watching then wasn't bad at all. He was... Ocon isn't bad in the wet either, is he? Jos Verstappen had that a bit normal in the dry, excellent in the wet, because he spent so long in the wet, right? I think they talk about it in the Unstoppable book. The Jos Verstappen, like driving in Belgium, the Netherlands, that's all that he did pretty much. Stop saying Lance is good in the wet, says Kenny. It's been 4 years since he showed actual wet weather majesty. Turkey 20, Brazil 24. Oh no, oh he's got me as Kenny. On most recent evidence, Lance Stroll is an absolute noob in the wet. Yeah, maybe I need to revise that, Kenny. You've trumped me there with evidence-based fact. Like, do you know what I mean? Missile says, Nando, you're killing me. Do the honours and smash the like. You guys are legends. Right. As a round third base, what else do we need to touch on? There are a gazillion topics, you know. Let me have a quick look. Because I had my notes. There are Ferrari new photos. I don't know what to make of the Ferrari. Go on, let me chime in on the Ferrari photos. I feel like I am saturated of Ferrari social media's presence. After a certain time, there is only so many photos of Charles Leclerc, aka modern day Jean Alesi, and Sir Lewis Hamilton that I can look at. I saw the most recent ones and I honed in on their flares. Why do these bods think it's so fashionable to wear these flary trousers? And again, I'm not the fashionista, right? But surely a nice clean, close-cut trouser leg. I mean, maybe that's just me being an old, a grizzled, grey-bearded F1 veteran and don't pay attention to me as far as fashion choices. But for once, I mean, Lewis nailed it with a pinstripe. Do you know what I mean? Like, he looked incredible. And then you get the flares again. Now they're in like casual sportswear, both Lewis and Shaw. And then you get the flares again. I mean, variety is the spice of life, but we're just doing flares each and every single time. Like, it's just like flipping Nora. It is upsetting, I think. Liam Lawson, Christian Horner. Oh, go on then, let's talk about this to bookend this conversation. Christian Horner spoke about the Aston Martin rumour, didn't he? And said what he's always been saying. He said something to this effect, that listen, that Aston Martin $1 billion deal that the Express, isn't it? It's the Daily Express that they published and said that Max Verstappen is potentially considering negotiating in real time with Aston Martin. Now look, as a channel that will never ever sacrifice truth value nor objectivity at the altar of confirmation bias, you know that there is confirmation bias interwoven into what Christian Horner's saying here. You think Christian Horner's going to come out and tell us, even if he knows for a fact that Maximilian Verstappen is having these conversations, that he is? Is that in Christian Horner's gift? What would be his incentive for telling? He's going to lie through his teeth. Max Verstappen might have told Christian Horner to his face that he's considering moving to an Aston Martin or Mercedes in real time. Christian's not going to tell us. Christian's job as team principal, I'm very hiccupy today, you'll excuse me. Christian Horner's job in real time is to right the ship, to steady it, to make sure it's stable. The exact thing that he didn't manage to do in 2024, almost to a fault as far as the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship are concerned. Very bloody nearly destabilised the team sufficient to have Maximilian Verstappen break his streak and sacrifice the fourth consecutive. Now Christian Horner's telling us it's nonsense. How does he know it's nonsense? Well, normally when these deals are a real thing, says Christian Horner, they happen most frequently behind closed doors. You only hear about them when they're being signed. Well, not quite true, chap. Because your old mate Adrian Newey is now a technical partner and shareholder at Aston Martin. And weeks before that was due to come out, we found out that was the case. What are you talking about, Christian Horner? That's your proof that you need that what you're talking is nonsense. Double underlined nonsense. I think you've got to understand Max Verstappen. All he wants to do is win. He cares not for second place, and that's why you're hearing the rumour that we still all need to take seriously, that as at the third race at Suzuka, if Max Verstappen isn't within the top three of the drivers standing, then he can null and void his contract in real time. Those aren't my words. That's the word on the F1 curb, and I've heard multiple people say that now. That's what Max Verstappen is, and if you don't believe that's a thing that you want to consider properly, you only need to rewind back to 2017, 2018, when Red Bull couldn't build Max Verstappen a proper car. You don't think he had performance clauses in his contract then? You don't think Jos Verstappen and Raymond Vermeulen were considering moving Max Verstappen on then? If you don't build him a car, he will dip off. Jos Verstappen, father of Max, is always talking about the potential eventuality that Max Verstappen will take a sabbatical. Take these things seriously, chat. I don't want to be the last across the line. Do you know what I mean? These things happen and everyone's going, oh, I'm so surprised. Lewis moves to Ferrari. I didn't see that one coming. Well, if you just listen to Lewis Hamilton and when he talks about Ferrari and the adoration of the Tifosi and the heritage and the legacy that comes with Scuderia Ferrari and Enzo Ferrari and every bloody body that's ever drived under the red emblem or the yellow emblem, black prancing horse atop, you will know that every F1 driver would, if given the opportunity, bite the hand of Enzo Ferrari to drive in that red car, yellow badge with black prancing horse atop. You just got to listen to the evidence, right? Whatever the drive, these guys don't tell lies 9 times out of 10. If they're telling you that they're going to take a sabbatical, if Max is telling you in real time that he needs a couple of things, semblance of harmony, no longer has that. He needs the key personnel at the team, no longer has that. Jonathan Wheatley, gone. Rob Marshall, gone. Adrian Newey, gone. All of the key people have left responsible, if past his prologue, for building Red Bull a quick car. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you? What that tells me is the following: that there are stakes in this off-season for the bulls that are red. Pierre Vacher, all that talk that you were talking about, Adrian Newey, when he leaves, you'll be all right. We've upskilled the team sufficiently so that we can work in a way that's independent. And Adrian Newey doesn't need to be here. Adrian he hasn't lifted a finger for the past 2 years. 2019 was the last car that he had anything to do with because he had an accident. Yeah, what now then? Now Adrian Newey's left, it's your time to shine. Do you know what I mean? Step up, Balbo and bloody Pierre Vache. It's your time to shine. Adrian Newey came out and said recently that they disagreed with the design philosophy tree up which you thought that it was sensible to bark. Now look, now you've got yourself, or at least as at the end of last year, you had a car that wouldn't turn, that lacked in aerodynamic efficiency, that so characterised the Adrian Newey iterations previous to the 2024, and like, what's the point? Like what are we doing here? Your time, chaps. Over to you. Your move. Listen, I'm gonna run. You guys have been legend. Oh, happy Valentine's Day. Didn't even touch on it. So focused on F1 shenanigans and bluster was I that I didn't even say happy Valentine's Day. How dare you, Cameron CC? Listen, let me say this. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you guys who are joining the channel, who members, elated peddlers, those of you in the chat, moderators extraordinaire each and every single time. For you guys are legends. This channel is nothing without you. As the F1 cycle starts to pick up, I grow excited. My sleep has stopped. Full stop, new paragraph. I just want to see some racing. Australia, the first Grand Prix, 14th. Oh my gosh, 14th of March. Can you see what day it is today? 14th. 1 month to the day, and I cannot wait for it. Between now and then, we're going to have the F1 livery launch, which we will be streaming. Of course, I need to go and set those up. So too will we have testing, 3 days of the 26th, the 27th, 28th of February, the Thursday, the Friday. Is it Thursday, Friday, and Saturday? No, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We will be here for each of those days talking about all these things. Was it wrong to put in for divorce? Mate, don't say that to my missus Ian. Do you know what I mean? Remco, thanks. No, you guys are legends. Absolute legends. Happy Valentine's Day to each and every single one of you. Happy Friday, more pertinently. Go and hug somebody that you love, even if you don't have a Valentine. You guys have been legends. I will see you same time, same place tomorrow. And at 10 a.m. British Standard, talking about all things, pulling at all the threads, the relevant ones, as far as F1 is concerned. You guys are legends. Between now and next time, the prosecution rests. No further questions, Your Honour.